If you're holding your breath for that big Cody Bellinger breakout signing, keep holding it because nothing's happening right now. But I wanted to talk about it. Also, the Cubs made 3 minor league signings that will affect the spring training roster, guys that will be invited to camp. And you wonder if maybe one of those guys will be, someone that would get to the big leagues at some point this year and help the team. But we appreciate you being here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Merry Christmas, everybody. That's coming up on Monday. Like and subscribe, and let's talk some Cubs baseball. What do you say? I'm Mick Gillispie. And again, thanks for being here at Broadcaster Mick on the socials. Make sure that you like and subscribe and be part of what we're doing. All right. I wanted to get into this because I think that it's the most significant move that the Cubs have to make this offseason. And that is adding Cody Bellinger to the roster again and giving him a long-term contract. And I get it. There are a lot of obstacles in the way of this negotiation, right? Bellinger, though, I mean, a 28-year-old, 2-time All-Star, former MVP. We saw him last year with the Cubs, and you just close your eyes and think about how the season went and how important he was to the lineup every day. You're talking about a difference maker, a guy that had that slash line, including a 307 batting average, 26 home runs, 97 runs batted in. And they were big hits and big home runs. It wasn't like he was, stacking his numbers in blowouts. Cubs played a lot of very close games last year, and it was Cody Bellinger that came up with a lot of the big hits in those games to help them win. Now, the issue is this. John Heyman reports that this could be a multi-year deal worth at least $200 million. I've heard it's way north of that from other sources, but who knows, right? And what I think benefits the Cubs the most is that this is a battle that seems to be down to the Blue Jays and the Cubs as far as serious contenders. Now, that could change, right? I mean, who knows? But when you look at what the teams that we thought would be in the mix for Bellinger are doing right now, it doesn't really feel like he's going to be coveted by the Yankees. I mean, they traded for Juan Soto. We thought that they would pay him. The Yankees were really worried about the analytic that talks and measures, really doesn't talk, but it measures exit velocity on hits. And the analytic crowd looks at exit velocity and they worry about that. If it doesn't matter if you bat 400, if you have a low exit velocity, and I guess he was one of the lowest exit velocity hitters, like in the lower 10% or something, then the analytic crowd worries about that. Okay, that's been a strike against him, and the Yankees didn't want him because of that, and they ended up getting Juan Soto, who's like on the other end of that spectrum. We saw that exit velocity. I was watching a video with Luke Stuckmeyer, and I loved it. I mean, he was kind of getting into that. I've talked about that before on the channel when I brought up Bellinger. I find some of these analytics to be pretty ridiculous. And that one to me is. And I just absolutely loved it when he started talking about Mark Grace and the fact that Bellinger was able to cut down on his 2-strike approach and put the ball in play. And I mean, one of the biggest issues in the game right now is that a lot of guys don't do that, right? They can't put the ball in play. And when you shorten your swing, your exit velocity, obviously you're not trying to hit a home run. You're just trying to put the ball somewhere, so it wouldn't be the same. But that's a strike against him, right? The Giants went out and they signed, the phenom out of South Korea. So maybe they're not in this mix anymore. The Dodgers got Ohtani. They're broke, I mean, at least it feels like they should be after him and Glass now. And so it leaves the Cubs and the Blue Jays. And also they're dealing with Scott Boras. And we've talked about Scott Boras and how difficult it is to deal with him and how he loves the waiting game. And, this may draw out all the way into March and April. And maybe in negotiations that's smart, but when you're trying to build a team, it's not, right? Because you want to get this deal out of the way so that you can start working on other things and get a feel of what your roster is. If the Cubs sign Bellinger, then you might trade Pete Crow Armstrong. I know I said it, but you have a center fielder. If you feel like you could get a really good top of the line starting pitcher, maybe you do that because you have so much outfield depth, but you're not going to make that move if you don't know if you're going to have him or not. Or maybe you don't sign a first baseman because you're going to play him there and platoon him. There's so many different things that hinge off of making a hire or making a signing like this because you're building your roster around that. But the one thing that I can say is that I don't feel like this is a game of chicken with the Blue Jays, as much as I respect that opinion. And the reason why is I just think when you're talking about this kind of money, if it's not a contract that you feel comfortable with, as far as you're paying him, you're already going to pay him more than he's worth. I mean, let's just be honest here. Yeah. These contracts are ridiculous and they're all guaranteed. And you have no idea to know if Cody Bellinger is going to be the guy that put up these numbers last year, right? Or he's going to be the guy that for 2 seasons in LA couldn't get a hit for his life, who's terrible, who they ended up, getting rid of and basically letting walk, right? There's a risk involved. Now, I think he's going to be the guy that we saw last year. I think he's healthier. I love watching him play, and I think a lot of you guys feel like that. But if I'm negotiating, I got to keep that in mind. The last thing you want is another Jason Hayward. Like, whatever happened, and I know Hayward had a better year for the Dodgers last season. Where were those years with the Cubs? I mean, it was ridiculous how bad he was at the plate. He was paid to be a star on the team, and he wasn't. I mean, literally the only reason that he played every day is because he was getting paid more money than anybody else. You had to play him. And I think that's what you worry about. You don't want to put yourself in a spot like that, where not only are you paying somebody, but you're also locking them into a position, whether they succeed or not. That's really how the business works. If you pay someone like Hayward and they're going to bat, in the low 200s and struggle, then you're stuck with that if you give them a long-term contract. So I get that part of it. And I wonder if Cody Bellinger would really want to go to Toronto. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm biased, but I can't imagine wanting to play for the Blue Jays. When you could be in Chicago, life isn't always about getting that extra dollar or penny. Sometimes it's about quality of life and happiness. It's also the environment. I mean, I know we're Cubs fans here, but let's be real. The environment kicks ass. You run out there every day and you wear that Cubs uniform. Go look at Ohtani's pictures in LA playing for the Angels. The stadium's empty. That's not how it is at Wrigley. Win, lose, or draw, Cubs fans are going to be there, and it's just a super fun environment, and it's the best fans in the world, and it's also in a city that's amazing as well. So I just feel like you got those things in your corner, and they're going to help you in this negotiation. If it was somewhere else, if it was New York or the Dodgers or something like that, I would be a lot more worried. But I feel like if you're close, unless they absolutely overpay him, and that's what his goal is, then I got a feeling that this is going to work out. You got to be patient in this game because they're going to force you to be patient. You got no other choice. I saw an article where it said that if whoever doesn't get Bellinger could get either one of these guys, right? Chapman or Hernandez. And I was thinking, like, I don't know. I mean, I think both guys bring some upside, but I don't know that if you don't get Bellinger that you have to make that decision. You may have to go another route, but and maybe you do, but and when I look at what the Cubs have in their system, putting Chapman over at third base to me is, I mean, he's a great defender, maybe better than anybody that they have, but putting the ball in play and other stuff, I would much rather go for the homegrown option there. And, but we'll see. Now, the Cubs did make a couple of, very insignificant moves, but left-hander Thomas Pannone just signed with the Cubs, and he pitched a little bit for the Brewers. Jorge Alfaro and Joe Hudson both signed as well. So, you know what? I mean, these are the kind of guys that show up to spring training and they help you maybe put them in AAA to add depth, or if someone gets hurt, you have a backup plan. So, and the Cubs, I've told you guys this, and I'm telling you right now, they have very little depth in catching in the system right now. And it's the same thing with starting pitching. Those are two areas where they're going to need some help. And I'm guessing that they're going to make some moves. They're going to have to before it's all said and done. All right, so that's it for today. I want to hear what you guys think. Always love hanging out and talking Cubs baseball. I would love a world where Cody Bellinger gets signed and it's not drawn out. I just don't think that that's possible. And I don't think that the Cubs should make a rush to a decision and then put themselves in a position where they're thin in other areas, or it's a deal that doesn't work for them. You give them too many extra years, and then all of a sudden, you got somebody playing that isn't able to do that. If that happened, if he didn't live up to his contract. So anyway, we'll see how it works out. But I honestly feel like they're going to get this done. I just think that it's going to take Jed Hoyer and those guys with the best negotiation that they can possibly have. And the market actually works in their favor because he just doesn't have a whole lot of options. And I think a lot of this is, his agent basically trying to make Toronto a bigger destination than they really are, just because that's the only play they have. The other plays are gone. I want to say that our buddy Chad Anderson, who's been vacationing at Disney, is going to be back with us sometime soon and jump on some shows and talk about the Cubs. He's helped over 10,000 families at Modern Lending get into homes and businesses. He's an investment consultant and an Airbnb expert. Talk to Chad at This Chad Is Real on socials, and of course part of Modern Lending. And then the Smokies, the Cubs AA affiliate. I love this thing. This is actually, not only does it look cool with their championship logo on it, their first one that they've taken home in 45 years, but it's comfortable. You can pick this up and a lot of other championship swag. They also have all of the autographs and game worn jerseys and game used bats and balls, all that stuff at the team store. And they also have Collector's Corner, which is their baseball card store. That's amazing as well. They even have a Babe Ruth autograph in there. So find out for yourself, smokiesbaseball.com/store. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow or maybe sooner. If something breaks, we'll be here. Go Cubs.